My brother got married last weekend and Instagram told me before he did. One swipe and there he was under fairy lights kissing the woman who once called my job cute. No invite. No warning. Just a wedding I wasn't meant to know about. When I called, she answered not him and said it calmly like she'd practiced, "My husband doesn't want you there." You're pathetic. What she didn't mention was the honeymoon I paid for, the loft they celebrated in that I owned, or the passwords she'd quietly changed to erase me. And none of them knew I was the one holding every thread of their perfect little life. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had family cut you out like you didn't matter. This isn't just a story about a wedding I wasn't invited to, it's about everything that led to that moment, and everything that shattered because of it. I was 21 when I learned how fast a life can end, and how quickly another begins one you never asked for. The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and cold air. A doctor with tired eyes said, "We did everything we could," and Jake, 12 years old and shaking, collapsed into me like a child falling into a storm. The nurse handed me a clipboard. "Sign here." That's the moment I stopped being a sister. I became whatever he needed next. We walked out into winter darkness, the kind that feels too quiet for grief. Snow landed in Jake's hair as he whispered the same question over and over. What do we do now? I didn't know. I just knew no one else was coming. Back home, our duplex felt smaller than ever. The heater rattled like it was begging for retirement, and the stack of bills on the kitchen table kept growing. I took whatever work paid: fast coat check shifts, late-night diner cleanup, office temp jobs that changed every week. I'd come home at 2 a.m. to find Jake asleep on the couch, his homework open beside him, TV flickering blue across his face. I'd turn it off, cover him with a blanket, and tell myself, we'll survive this. We have to. Most sacrifices don't announce themselves. They slip in quietly. Like the night I got my first real paycheck, $300. I went to buy groceries, but when I walked past the toy aisle, I saw a Lego robotics kit on sale. Jake had wanted to join robotics club for months, but I'd told him we couldn't afford it. I stood there doing the math: 1 week of good meals, or the first real joy he'd had since Mom's funeral. I bought the kit and ate microwave noodles for 8 days. We didn't talk about struggle, we just lived inside it. But slowly Jake found his footing again. High school gave him purpose. He became the kid teachers relied on when the projector broke, the kid who stayed after class to help reboot laptops. He'd come home excited, hands moving fast as he described something he built. "When I'm an engineer," he'd say, "I'll take care of you, Ava. Just wait." I'd smile, pretending not to feel the sting of hope I didn't dare hold. College came next, a good school better than I expected. The day he got his acceptance letter, he burst through the door like he was carrying pure sunlight. I hugged him so tightly he laughed through tears. But beneath that joy was reality: tuition, books, housing. I picked up extra shifts, skipped meals, said no to things I wanted, just so he didn't have to. Still, he called me almost every night that first year. He'd talk about new friends, new classes, new inside jokes. It felt like we'd survived something together. Like the worst was finally behind us. I didn't know then that the years I spent building him up would later be twisted into something else: dependence, interference, control. I had no idea how easily gratitude can sour when someone else whispers a different story into the ear of the person you love. Jake's senior year of college came with a new problem: where he was going to live after graduation. The rental market was brutal, and the places he could afford looked like settings for true crime documentaries. I wanted him somewhere safe, somewhere steady. That's how the loft happened. A small unit in the River Market district, exposed brick tall windows, sunlight pooling across the floor every morning like warm gold. It felt like the kind of place where a future could grow. I met with the realtor, ran the numbers, and signed the mortgage under my name. "It's just until you're settled," I told him. He hugged me and whispered, "I'll pay you back." I swear, I believed him. That Thanksgiving I cooked a small dinner: roasted chicken instead of turkey, cinnamon in the air, the old kitchen feeling warmer than usual. Jake walked in wearing a designer jacket he couldn't possibly afford. "Gift from a girl I'm seeing," he said, cheeks flushed, trying to sound casual. Her name was Brielle. I didn't meet her that night, but even then something tightened in my chest. Not jealousy, just instinct, the way a house creaks before a storm. When I finally met her a few weeks later, she looked me over the way people inspect a receipt for mistakes. "So you're the sister," she said, smiling with her mouth, not her eyes. Something in her tone made the room colder. After that, things shifted, not abruptly, not loudly. Just enough. Jake's texts got shorter. His calls came later. Stories he used to share with me first were now told secondhand, filtered through her. At first I blamed growing up, work stress, new love, all the normal things. But then the comments started. Jake says you worry too much. Jake says you do too much. Jake says he needs space. I would look at him and he'd avoid my eyes like he knew the words weren't truly his, but he didn't want to fight the person feeding them to him. The night he canceled our weekly dinner, I knew something was breaking. I'd spent an hour cooking the table set with 2 plates like always. 20 minutes before he was supposed to arrive, he called. Brielle made reservations. He said, laughing at something in the background, "We'll do next week." But next week never came. Still, I tried to stay hopeful. I'd spent 15 years surviving storms. Surely I could weather one more. Then came the evening he asked me to help review some documents for him. It felt like how things used to be, me helping him, trusting. I printed everything, drove to the loft, and walked up with a small bubble of relief in my chest. But the hallway was loud music, voices, laughter. Warm light spilled from under the door. Before I knocked, a neighbor stepped out carrying cookies. "Going to the engagement party?" she asked. My stomach dropped. Engagement party. She smiled, oblivious. "Yeah, Jake and Brielle. It's adorable." I knocked anyway. The music lowered. Brielle cracked the door open just enough to block the view. "Oh," she said. "Didn't expect you." I brought Jake the documents he asked for. She stepped outside, shutting the door behind her. "Yeah, he's busy." I felt the floor tilt under me. "You had an engagement party. Here." And she asked, shrugging. "Jake doesn't want tension. You've been too involved. Let him breathe." I opened my mouth, but she lifted her phone, recording. "Don't make a scene," she whispered. The folder in my hand suddenly felt heavy. Useless. "You tell him I stopped by," I said quietly, turning away. Inside the elevator, under the harsh flickering light, I saw my reflection. Perfect makeup, composed face, calm exterior. But inside, something finally cleanly cracked. And once it cracked, everything that came next was inevitable. The week after the engagement party felt different, colder, like the weather inside my life had shifted a few degrees. Jake didn't message. He didn't call. Even his silence felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. I told myself to stay patient, but patience has a way of turning into denial when you're trying not to lose the last person you raised. The first real fracture came quietly. A Tuesday night, I texted him, "Dinner chili tonight, mom's recipe." An hour later, he replied, "Busy." No explanation, no sorry, not even a punctuation mark. Jake had never been a one-word person. It wasn't the message that hurt, it was the version of him I didn't recognize anymore. A few days later, I saw a story on Brielle's Instagram. She sat on the loft's couch, the couch I'd bought, wine glass in hand, light perfect on her face. Text overlay. "Some people cling to you because they can't build anything on their own." My chest went tight. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. I didn't confront her. I didn't tell Jake. I simply closed the app and let the silence settle around me like dust. Still, the fractures kept spreading. He missed our weekly dinner, then the next, then the next. Each time with a new excuse: work project, last-minute plans. Brielle wants to try a new restaurant. Each time I heard her voice in the background, laughter cutting sharply through the phone. I tried to brush it off as new relationship energy. But then came the night I stopped by the loft to drop off a package mistakenly delivered to my place. A habit from his college days he never fixed. When Brielle opened the door, she looked at me like I was a problem she thought she'd already solved. "You really shouldn't show up without texting," she said. "I'm just dropping off his mail," I replied. Her smile sharpened. "Jake doesn't need you running errands for him. He's not a kid." Funny, I thought, considering I'd spent years making sure he could grow into the man she claimed to love. Behind her, Jake's silhouette hovered in the hallway. He didn't greet me. He didn't step forward. He didn't invite me in. He just stood there, held in place by her gravity. By the time I got home that night, something inside me had started unraveling. Not all at once, just the first few threads. Then things escalated. A week later, Jake asked if he could stop by to talk. I felt a flicker of hope, maybe an apology, maybe clarity. But when the door opened, Brielle was behind him, arms crossed, expression already loaded. Jake stepped in. She didn't. He inhaled, bracing himself. "Ava, I need boundaries." "Boundaries?" I repeated. "Yeah," Brielle inserted smoothly. "He feels you've been a little too involved." Jake nodded like a man repeating lines someone rehearsed with him. "I appreciate everything you've done. I just need to figure things out on my own." "You mean with her?" I said softly. He looked down. She smirked. And in that moment I realized the fight wasn't between me and her. It was between who he'd been and who she wanted him to be. They left 5 minutes later. The air in my apartment felt thinner after the door clicked shut. That night I tried logging into Spotify: error. Netflix: error. Uber family plan removed. Then an email came in, password changed from new iPhone device. Jake didn't use an iPhone, but Brielle did. It wasn't about the apps, it was the message. She wasn't taking space. She was erasing territory. And Jake was letting her. That's when I understood she didn't want to join his life. She wanted to rebuild it without me in it. A few days after the passwords changed, Jake texted me asking for help with a work contract. It felt like a small lifeline, a reminder of the old him, the one who trusted me, the one who didn't need Brill translating his thoughts. I printed everything, grabbed my keys, and drove to the loft as if one conversation could fix a year of slow damage. But the moment I reached the hallway, I knew I was wrong. Laughter spilled from the door, glasses clinked, music thumped softly through the walls. The warm glow of string lights flickered beneath the edges of the doorway, and for a second, I wondered if I had the wrong unit. Then a neighbor stepped out holding a tray of cookies. "Oh, are you headed to the engagement party?" she asked cheerfully. My heart dropped so fast it felt physical. "Engagement party," she nodded. "Jake and Brielle. They said they were keeping it small." Small. So small I didn't exist in it at all. Before I could think, my knuckles were already knocking on the door. The music dimmed. Someone hushed the room. Then the door cracked open just enough for Brielle's face to appear. Her smile was all veneer. "Well, she said this is unexpected." I brought Jake the documents he asked for. She stepped into the hallway, carefully pulling the door closed behind her so I couldn't see inside. "He's busy." "Celebrating?" I asked. Her expression didn't change. "Ava, look. This is exactly why he needs space. You show up, you overstep, you make things heavy." I swallowed hard. I've been his support system for 15 years. "Exactly." Her voice sharpened. "And he's finally ready to grow past that. You should be proud of him." Then she did it. She lifted her phone camera, pointed at me, recording. "Don't make this emotional," she whispered. "It won't look good." For a second, I just stared at her, stunned by the cold calculation of it. She wasn't trying to protect Jake. She was building a case, shaping a narrative where I was the problem. My fingers tightened around the folder. It felt suddenly childish, useless, a symbol of a role I wasn't allowed to play anymore. "You tell him I stopped by," I said softly. I turned and walked to the elevator. The door slid shut, trapping me with my reflection under flickering fluorescent light. My face was calm, perfect makeup, controlled expression, but that was only surface tension. Inside, something cracked with a quiet finality. Not grief, not anger, recognition. I wasn't part of his future. I was part of the life he was trying to shed. For the next 6 days, he didn't reach out except once. A text. "Let's talk later." Later never came. But distance has a way of clarifying things. Silence draws borders you didn't know existed. And on the 7th morning, when sunlight sliced through my blinds like a clean blade, I woke with a different kind of clarity, cold, steady, deeply rooted. This wasn't a phase. It wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't a bad week or a rough patch. They had pushed me out of their world, and they assumed, like they always had, that I'd stay right where they left me. What they didn't understand was simple. I wasn't the one about to fall. They were standing on foundations that belonged entirely to me. On the 7th morning, I woke before my alarm. The room was pale with early light, the kind that makes everything look colder than it is. For the first time in months, there was no ache in my chest, just a quiet, razor-sharp stillness. The kind of calm you feel right before pulling a trigger. I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the files I'd avoided looking at for weeks. Mortgage, utilities, phone plan, emergency credit line, travel fund. Each document was a thread Jake and Brielle had been living on, confidently, blindly, never checking where it was tied. Every thread ran straight back to me. My cursor hovered for 1 second, then I made the first cut. Airline customer service. "How may I help you?" "I need to cancel a reservation," I said. My voice sounded different, steady in a way I didn't recognize. "Confirmation number 5D9F. 2 premium tickets to Paris. Their honeymoon. Purchased with money I'd saved from years of double shifts and skipped meals." "Reason for cancellation?" the agent asked. "Plans changed." 30 seconds later, the tickets were gone. A refund confirmation lit up my inbox like a small explosion. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled, not relief, not victory, just clarity. Next came the travel fund. I logged in, entered the code, texted to my phone, and watched the balance glow on the screen, $42, $314.12. Money I'd saved a little at a time, imagining Jake standing on cobblestones in Europe, seeing the world he'd dreamed of. I clicked withdraw all. A warning flashed. Penalties, early fees, taxes. I hit confirm. The number vanished. Then I called Reed, the realtor. He answered with his usual upbeat tone. "Ava." "How's everything?" "Fine," I said. "I'm ready to sell the loft." Silence. "Sell it? The River Market loft." "I thought your brother." "I'm selling it." Today. Reed didn't push. I'll list it within the hour. He did. And within 3 hours he emailed again. Multiple offers already, one cash. Above asking. I responded with 2 words. Take it. By noon, the loft, their home, their photo backdrop, their stage was no longer theirs. I moved to utilities next. Electricity terminate. Water terminate. Wi-Fi terminate. Phone plan remove user. Emergency credit card cancel authorization. Each click was a quiet severing, a reversal of 15 years of giving. By late afternoon, their entire safety net was gone. At 3:47 p.m., my phone lit up. Jake. For one breath, I almost answered. I pictured him in the loft, lights off, Wi-Fi down, honeymoon canceled, a stranger calling to schedule showings of the apartment he thought was his. He must have felt the floor drop beneath him. But I let it ring. Voicemail. Another call. Another. A text, Ava, please call me. I blocked him. Not out of cruelty, but because he'd taught me finally that a closed door stays closed for a reason. For the first time in years, the weight I carried wasn't on my shoulders anymore. I had set it down and watched it fall exactly where it belonged. The next morning, the world was still. My apartment felt almost foreign in its quietness. No buzzing phone, no tightness in my chest, no dread humming under my skin. Just air, space, a kind of peace I hadn't felt since before the hospital hallway all those years ago. Around noon, Reed emailed again. Cash offer accepted. Buyer wants to close fast. I clicked confirm without hesitation. As I sat there, I pictured the building manager walking down the hallway to Jake's door, taping a notice with neat blue tape. The way Brielle would yank it off, voice rising, insisting there had been a misunderstanding. How Jake would stand behind her, stunned, seeing for the first time what he had been living inside, a world built entirely on my name, not his, not hers. Nothing they stood on was theirs, not the roof, not the lights, not the furniture she bragged about in her vlogs. Even the mattress they slept on had come from a midnight sale I stood in line for. I hadn't taken anything from them, I had simply returned everything to where it belonged. That afternoon, the building manager left a voicemail, his voice tight, slightly shaken. Miss Collins, your brother's wife came into the office demanding answers. We explained everything is in your name. We'll proceed exactly as instructed. I didn't replay it. I didn't need to. I went for a walk instead. The air was brisk, carrying the scent of rain-soaked concrete and distant wood smoke. I let the cold settle into my lungs, clearing away the last traces of guilt I used to mistake for responsibility. For so long, I thought strength meant holding everything together, carrying people, fixing things, staying loyal even when it hurt. But standing there on that quiet street, I finally understood something much simpler. Strength can also look like letting everything fall. They thought cutting me out would break me. They thought silence would bury me. They thought I would stay where they left me. But they never realized the truth. Every thread of their life was tied to me. And once I let go, nothing they built could stand. I didn't destroy them. I freed myself. And for the first time in years, I finally had a life of my own to step into. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit subscribe. You're not alone, and stories like ours don't end with one decision or one goodbye. Sometimes the cleanest break is the first real breath you've taken in years. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever had to walk away from someone you loved to save yourself. Someone out there needs to hear your story too. And trust me, this one isn't over.